sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
Good morning, Dick Morris.
Good morning.
Or hello. I just want to say happy birthday to my beautiful mother, Gloria. 93 today.
Wow.
Hi,
great.
Ma, if you're listening.
That's great.
Happy birthday.
So the world is going crazy because of Trump's tariffs and his economic initiative. There's a movement called the Resistance that held rallies throughout the country this weekend, and yesterday, and they estimated that 600,000 people showed up at all of them combined. And they're all hollering and protesting about the billionaire takeover of the government, meaning Elon Musk, and Trump's policies, his tariffs, and everything else. But I want to just make a few things very clear. First of all, I support everything Trump is doing right now. It's very important, it's brilliant, it's innovative, and it's going to totally change America and totally change the world. It's one of the most visionary, important steps an American president has taken in over 100 years. And the opposition to it is largely either Democrats who are reflexively opposed to anything Trump does, and people who are self-interested, people who are consultants for foreign countries who are worried that their imports are going to be more expensive, people who are on payrolls of different economic institutes that are committed to free trade. But these are birthing pains of a new policy that is very, very important. There's a brilliant article by a guy named Thomas Kolbe, Kolbe, who's a German economist, former victim of the Holocaust.
Really?
And he writes something that is an essay on this that's wonderful. And let me read it to you. A tremor ripples through the world of numbers, a harbinger of a new era. The mercantilist pivot of the United States. Now, by that he means moving away from free trade and toward mercantilism that was a nationalist view of the process, saying take care of your own country first. The mercantilist pivot of the United States is shaping up the well-rehearsed choreography of global markets. A reordering of trade is taking place. Since the Bretton Woods Conference of 1944, the U.S. has shouldered responsibility for the world's reserve currency, with all the perks and pitfalls that entails. In the engine room of the global economy, the dollar has been the lubricant ever since, with U.S. supplying banks and debtors by tolerating a chronically growing trade deficit until Trump ended it on April 2nd, Liberation Day. In other words, the United States deliberately chose to buy more than it sold to the rest of the world. And did that because in 1945, after World War II, we had 50% of the globe's GDP, and we couldn't live in a world where there was only the United States. So we helped other countries get back on their feet by running trade deficits with them, buying more from them than they bought from us.
And we couldn't take it back, and we can backtrack?
So for example, we gave it to Germany and Japan, and then they used access to our markets to put their economies back in order. And then we did it with China and Southeast Asia and Taiwan and India, Africa. And in all of these cases, we were very successful in reducing global poverty and helping other countries survive. The number of people in the world who are rated as very poor dropped by 2 billion people in the last 25 or 30 years, largely as a result of U.S. trade deficits. Now Trump is saying enough. We've run deficits for so long that now it's time that we go back to normal. And we're just asking for normal. We're not asking for subsidies. But we're going to end the policies of subsidizing the rest of the world. Back to the article.
Interesting.
The Trump administration didn't just start waving the flag against deficits a few days ago. Anyone following the Trump campaign since 2023 could see what's coming. A new trade order with the U.S. as the architect of international supply chains. And it's happening with maximum radicalism. It consists of a couple of policies. Aggressive tariffs, meaning that we're not going to let countries rip us off. A weaker dollar. The way China maintains a surplus with the U.S. is by keeping the dollar strong. In other words, buying dollars and selling yuan. And that's so that they want American products to cost more on the global market, and their products cost less. So it would seem that a country that wants a stronger dollar is helping the U.S., but it's not. It's really screwing the U.S. Falling interest rates so that our economy can be stimulated. Tax cuts and deregulation are the vectors, the driving forces of the U.S. government's battle against the enemy that is seeped into society like a creeping poison, debt. It's the expression of the high time preference, the desire to have things without much effort. Holding the global reserve currency cheapens imported consumption as the demand for the dollar seems boundless. In other words, we deliberately let the world rip us off because we wanted to help the world and we wanted to protect our position in it. But the result has been a debt that is so big and so huge that it's come to dominate the American economy. This poison, this debt, and vast swatches of the private sector are in stranglehold. Yet behind the curtain of tariff steamrollers and fiery rhetoric, a deeper longing glimmers, and this is the key point. A resurgent domestic industry in the U.S., the return of national creativity, a shift from consumer frenzy to entrepreneurial spirit. That's what Trump is encouraging. Nothing less than the revival of the American do-it-yourself ethos is at stake. This is by a German economist. That spirit was outsourced ever since Nixon's ended the dollar's gold convertibility, leaving behind industrial ruins and social crises. The Rust Belt, the region hit hardest by the policy, remains the embodied national nightmare. But how well has the U.S. government anticipated its trading partners' responses? How precisely has it calculated the second-order effects? The tariff move, tailored precisely to the U.S. economy's national trade deficits, will send shockwaves through the markets, and it's doing that. Stocks sold off at first but is stabilizing now that the tariff Damocles sword has finally dropped. How will the U.S. dollar and bond markets react to this massive upheaval of the status quo? The German economist goes on to write, after turbulence and high volatility, things will settle into business as usual, while awareness of credit risk elsewhere, like the Eurozone, grows. There, the initial reaction was defiance. French President Macron urged European companies to freeze investments in the U.S., while early voices from Brussels, the capital of the EU, hint at taking on American giants with regulatory muscle, Elon Musk in particular. Only a cynic would suspect that this has anything to do with Europe's censorship efforts. We'll go into that later in the show. Meanwhile, the Americans are charging ahead, announcing massive tax cuts. The goal is rapid reindustrialization, job growth in the private sector to absorb the tens of thousands laid off from bloated government bureaucracies. Alongside this, the energy sector is being deregulated, securing massive cost advantages for American manufacturers over the European rivals. The aim is to wipe out the trade deficit, which ballooned to a staggering $800 billion last year. Remarkably, markets didn't see the tariff club coming, even though Trump never hid his intention to bludgeon it out of existence if need be. Time and again he stressed that the U.S. would no longer be taken for a ride or bled dry, and more than once he pointed toward Brussels. Key sectors like the auto industry, a tough blow for Germany, written by a German economist, semiconductors and artificial intelligence data centers are set to stage a massive comeback under the Made in USA banner. This policy is laser-focused on national interests and it just might work. Amazing. And it is working. In other words, what Trump is doing is he's basically saying, I'm going to stop subsidizing the rest of the world and I'm going to just act in our own national interest. And that means that we've got to resource our supply chains so that they draw on American businesses, not on foreign ones. And I'm going to stop subsidizing the rest of the world by running a trade deficit with them.
And the rest of the world will grow stronger because they will have to.
Yes.
They will build their economy in their way.
Precisely, particularly Europe. It means that they can't take mandatory required 5-week vacations.
You were just telling me this.
They
the
can't
other day,
continue to work weeks that average about 25 hours a week.
Yeah, right.
They've got to actually work. And and the socialist economies there aren't going to work anymore. So it's a major, huge change, and it's causing changes in the way every country lives and every corporation operates. But they're very, very good. They mean that the United States will become the center of economic activity, that our industries will flourish, that new companies will come to the U.S., and forget new companies, new people are going to come to the U.S. That's why he's selling visas for $5 million apiece under his gold visa program, where if you pay $5 million, you can come and go as you please.
Kind of like back to the land of opportunity type of thing.
Exactly. And this is
Especially
an amazing
change
and a wonderful, wonderful change. Absolutely incredible. God bless Donald Trump.
You know what, Dick? I have a song for you. I didn't tell you about it. You have so much to say. Come on, Lux. That's Dick Morris.
That's a good compliment.
It's good stuff.
Okay, when we come back, we'll talk about how the Senate just passed Trump's agenda, and Congress looks like it's falling in line behind Trump. Sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. So, meanwhile, the Trump agenda is moving through Congress very nicely and very rapidly. The Senate passed the Trump budget this week. Before both chambers can begin a difficult negotiation on the bill to beef up border security, expand oil and gas drilling, increase defense spending, and extend Trump's 2017 tax cuts. Those are all pretty easy to do, and they'll clearly happen. Once both chambers agree on the joint budget resolution, it will unlock the reconciliation process that allows Senate Republicans to pass Trump's agenda with a simple majority vote and avoid a Democratic filibuster. The budget debate revealed the biggest looming fight between the Senate and House Republicans is over Medicaid. And that is such a phony fight. The Democrats are trying to pretend the fight is over Medicaid benefits, but it's not. Medicaid benefits are not going to be cut at all. Actually, what they're hoping people will think is it's Medicare, which isn't touched at all. This is Medicaid, the program for poor people, not for old people. But what it's doing is cutting back the administrative red tape in the program. And it's also restoring it to the financial level that it was when Obama took office. See, what happened was when Obama took office, his big slogan was health insurance for everybody, universal coverage. So he set up this highly complicated plan of government subsidies and government regulation to assure that everybody bought health insurance that they could afford. And it didn't work. It didn't work because the costs were too high, the deductibles were too large, the premiums were too high, and a lot of people didn't see the need for it. If they're single or they're young, what did they need it for? So it failed to give universal coverage. So Obama stepped into the breach when he was president, didn't want to admit a failure, and he expanded the Medicaid program that had been kicking around since 1965. And the idea was, and Medicaid is basically a welfare program, and he increased it because it was the easiest way to guarantee universal coverage. Then we were hit with COVID, and all of a sudden everybody panicked and said, we've got to get everybody signed up onto Medicaid. I don't care if they're rich or poor, young or old, we got to do it because we got to make sure everybody gets health care because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And the result was that, again, Medicaid expanded. So between these two moves, under Obama and under Biden, Medicaid which is shared by the federal and state government, grew from about $20 billion to $300 billion.
No.
And has become the biggest budget item other than Medicare and Social Security in the whole federal budget. So what Trump is doing is he's saying, okay, I'm going to, first of all, I'll enforce the eligibility standards for Medicaid that everybody disregarded during the pandemic when everybody wanted to sign everybody up. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to kick a lot of people off Medicaid who are too rich for it. And they'll get private health insurance. The second thing I'm going to do is, when Medicaid was passed, it was half paid for by the states and half paid for by Washington. But Obama and Biden kicked it up to 90% federal and only 10% state.
What, just to make it easier for the states?
Yeah, so they could sign more people up.
Sure.
Obama, so he could claim this was universal coverage,
Sure.
and Biden, so he could claim he was protecting against
and
COVID.
Obama could say it was his gift type of thing.
And what Trump is going to do is cut it back. Maybe not to 50-50, maybe to 60-40, Fed's paying 60, Fed's paying two-thirds, states and local
Sure.
one-third, but he'll move it back to reason. And then what will happen is the governors of the states are going to have to throw people off Medicaid because they can't afford to pay half of the cost. So
yeah, but each state will adjust according to themselves
exactly.
and their people.
And it's appropriate. Why
Yes.
should we pay
Right.
for massive benefits to people who are too rich to need them and who can afford private health insurance?
And let the people in the states vote how they want to do it.
Exactly.
In and out.
So the Democrats are claiming these are cuts in Medicaid, but they're not. They're just rolling Medicaid back to what it was before the left got a hold of it under Obama and made it into a universal, huge national welfare program.
Well, of course they do their scare tactic, the Dems.
That's what the fight is about over the federal budget. Now, good news. The job outlook brightens. Lux? And the economists and the experts are saying, but there are tariffs coming and God knows what they're going to do. Non-farm payrolls increased by 228,000 jobs last month, after 117,000 job rise in February. That was almost twice what the economists had predicted. And U.S. private payroll growth accelerated in March. Private payrolls increased by 155,000 jobs last month, after a rise of 84,000 in February. So the economy is doing great. And the only thing holding it back are the predictions of the economists that it's going to fall apart. And those predictions are bought and paid for by the industry that wants to stop the tariffs. Another country Europe says, I don't want tariffs, and the car manufacturers there say, I don't want tariffs.
Sure.
So they go out and they hire Joe Blow, who is an economist, and he goes on the air and he says, don't take this job growth seriously. It's going to end in a few hours. And it never does end. It keeps growing.
No one's going to be able to afford cars and things coming in.
But it keeps growing. The economy keeps going on. Trump is doing great. And every article you read about it said, U.S. economy had far more jobs than expected in March, but President Trump's sweeping import tariffs could test the labor market's resilience in the months ahead, amid sagging business confidence and stock market sell-off. That's all baloney. It's just propaganda designed to weaken support for what Trump is doing. Now,
and he's not going to care about his support right now.
Well, thankfully. Now, the Republicans in the Senate, some of them are beginning to fold under this pressure. And Chuck Grassley, who's normally pretty good, a Republican from Iowa, joined with the Democrats to introduce a bipartisan bill on Thursday that would limit the president's power to impose tariffs, allowing Congress to remove tariffs put in place by the president. Any tariffs imposed by the president would expire after 60 days, unless Congress voted to approve them. Congress also would have the power to terminate tariffs at any time by voting to pass a resolution of disapproval. That is a horrible, terrible, awful idea. I hope that Grassley is doing it simply to appease domestic workers in Iowa, domestic industry.
What's it going to take to pass that bill?
Well, it's going to take passage, and I don't think they can do it. And I think if they pass it, Trump's going to veto it.
But a simple majority?
Simple majority, right. But Trump can veto it. So we're safe about it. But that's what a lot of the politicians are doing, running for cover, claiming this. So there is a national boycott of Walmart that's supposed to start on April 7th, on Monday. And it's a left-wing boycott. And they're attacking corporate greed and attacking Walmart for halting its DEI programs, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The company decided late last year that it would discontinue racial equity training, stop funding its racial equity center, and cease participation in the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index.
Was that like critical race theory type of stuff?
Exactly.
Like they were doing in the school, really?
A group called People's Union USA is calling for a one-week boycott of Walmart. The tactics will be similar to the boycotts which highlighted Target over similar moves to roll back DEI. But the one over Walmart is actually about corporate greed and corruption. No matter what side of the political fence you're on, you should be able to agree that corporate greed and political corruption are choking the country, People's Union USA said, per the outlet. Absolute bullshit. BS. Baloney. Sorry, I shouldn't have said the S word. And
don't worry about it.
And it's absolute garbage. The U.S. economy is doing great. Corporate greed is also called the profit motive, and it keeps the economy rolling and keeps the economy going. But the left is trying to boycott it and trying to holler about it. So please make a point and shop at Walmart so that during this week, so their sales go up and they know the boycott isn't helping.
That's funny, but it's funny. Boycott. What are they going to do now? The left, they're going to break windows and whatnot, like they do with Tesla.
Yeah.
We just stopped buying light beer when they did what they did, Budweiser. These people burning Teslas, and so what are they going to do? Walmart. We got time for the story, Dick? So Canada puts billboards in border states attacking the tariffs. This is something else. At 12 a.m. the other morning, Trump's new 10% baseline tariffs on nearly all nations and all imported goods took effect. Meanwhile, the first outlines of a bipartisan opposition to the sweeping tariffs are emerging. On the Hill, a bipartisan group is working on legislation that'll wrest control back of tariff policy from the president.
That's what I was talking about, this horrible bill.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead.
Right. So far here in Michigan, a battleground state, Trump won by 1.4% points, a bit over 80,000 votes. The most visible sign of the trade war are black and white billboards that read, "Tariffs are tax." The billboards paid for by the Canadian government, there you go, are now in 12 states and in Washington. Michigan is crucial midterm state for both parties with 4 statewide seats.
Yeah, tariffs are a tax on foreigners.
Right.
And they may pass it on to Americans or they may not. A great many companies, when they're faced with an increase in tariff, find other places to buy their goods and their services and their supply chains, and they don't pass it on to the American people. In fact, when Trump raised tariffs on China in his first term, inflation didn't budge at all. And inflation at the moment is near zero in the United States. So this is all fear-mongering and scare-mongering and trying to whip up domestic support for opposition to the Trump programs.
Yeah, well, look at these other countries that are cutting net tariffs. You got India, Vietnam, and Israel. Unbelievable. On Tuesday, Israel announced the cancellation of all remaining tariffs on imports from the United States. Prime Minister Netanyahu, I love, stated that this move is intended to strengthen economic ties with the U.S. and lower living costs. And you see right there, it's working, right? And then Vietnam has outlined plans to reduce tariffs on several U.S. products, including liquefied natural gas, that's LNG, right? Automobiles and ethanol. The tariff on American liquid gas will decrease from 5 to 2% on cars, from a range of 45 to 64% down to 32%. On ethanol, from 10% to 5%. These measures aim to lower Vietnam's trade surplus with the U.S. and avoid potential U.S. tariffs. See, they're just hearing that Trump's going to do this tariff thing, and they're already making their move before it shows up in their economy and with their people. India is considering cutting tariffs on over half of U.S. imports valued at $23 billion to protect its $66 billion in imports from impending U.S. reciprocal tariffs. Negotiations are underway with India, indicating a willingness to significantly lower or entirely remove tariffs on many goods, U.S. goods, contingent on the U.S. provided relief from the reciprocal tariff. Now, tell me about that.
Well,
provided relief.
Tariffs are working.
What's provided relief? What do they mean by that?
Well, they don't want the U.S. tariffs, so they're cutting their own tariffs because they'll make
that's going to provide them the relief that they're not going to get to. Got it.
So Trump is saying, I'm going to raise tariffs on everybody, and they're lining up at his door to promise that they'll cut tariffs so we don't increase ours. And it's a Trump policy working beautifully.
It's amazing.
Now, a big part of what Trump is planning to do is to help our economy by making energy cheaper.
With oil.
Yeah, so go ahead.
The oil prices plunged by 8% on Friday, heading for the lowest close since the midst of the coronavirus pandemic in 21.
And one of our good friends, Iran, its currency is in total freefall. Listen to this. On Saturday, you could get a U.S. dollar cost 1 million reals, the Iranian currency. But 4 years ago, it cost 55,000 reals. So the cost of the dollar in Iran has gone up from 55,000 to 1 million.
Wow.
What it basically means is that Iran has no more currency. You either use dollars or you sell
gold.
Or gold, or you just barter. And a country.
What are they gonna do? I'll wax your car.
Yeah.
If you
exactly.
If you fill up my car.
Right. And it is so incredible to watch what's happening to Iran.
Wow. But how is this happening anyway? What's going on?
Well, we're cutting off oil exports from Iran. We're saying you can't buy Iranian oil. And then we're doing something really great, really new. We're saying to other countries, if you buy oil from Iran, you can't do business in the United States.
Ooh.
If you buy oil from Iran or Venezuela, you can't do business in the United States. Very, very, very strong stuff.
That, you know what that is, Dick? That's a big boy boycott.
Yeah, it is.
That's what that is.
And you can't do any kind of business in the U.S. It's wonderful.
Beautiful.
Okay, when we get back, China is trying to flood the U.S. with imports via Mexico, and Donald Trump is stopping them.
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
to get the guy that's doing the opening for us to say the Dick Morris, Doug DePiro show.
Yeah, I don't know. Carl Katzimatidis.
I got to talk to that guy. Hey, Maddie, go talk to that guy.
Yeah. Chinese companies have kept many goods flowing to the U.S. by manufacturing them in Mexico, where products shipped to the U.S. tariff-free under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement that Trump negotiated in his first term. Chinese firms have invested billions of dollars in hundreds of Mexican factories that make auto parts, electronics, home appliances, furniture, medical equipment, and other products for the American market. To Trump's dismay, the U.S. trade deficit with Mexico has grown from nearly $172 billion last year from about $78 billion 4 years ago.
Wow.
His administration now wants to stop what it views as a big loophole in the trade agreement between U.S. and Mexico. Trump has repeatedly singled out Mexico's auto industry and its ties with Chinese manufacturers. American automakers import more than 40% of their parts from Mexico, many from Chinese-owned factories. On top of the 25% tariffs on all imports of steel and aluminum, plus a 25% tariff on foreign cars that goes into effect this week, the Trump administration is weighing what kind of tariffs to impose Wednesday, including specific rates for U.S. trading partners or a broad tariff that would affect everybody. Unwinding critical parts of the global supply chain will be costly and cumbersome to everyone, from manufacturers to consumers. Yet as long as the current trade agreement holds, so will the Chinese-Mexican connection to the U.S. market, experts say.
Interesting.
So Trump is going to wind that down, and you can bet that that's going to stop really quickly. But, you know, if you go to your car dealers and you notice that the price for foreign cars has really increased, I got a good solution for you. Drive on and go to an American car dealership.
Right.
And buy an American car.
Well, you know, that's what this is, Dick. And we said this last week also. This is just incentive for the car manufacturers to build a little bit. First of all, American cars are fantastic. The only time American cars really started to fall was the early 70s, first of all, with the pollution regulation. And the fat cats, of course, from the 50s and 60s, American cars were the best thing ever in history. So the guys got fat. In the 70s, they just laid back with their martinis and their cigars and made junk. After the 90s, let's say late 90s, American cars were fantastic. Cadillac came up with some great stuff, Corvette, GM across the board. So there's no more, you know, it used to be Mercedes was the rich guy car, and everyone thought that was a better car, and BMW. They were not. They were good. They're great cars, without a doubt. BMW's a little clunky looking for me. But now American cars are just as good and a lot better than many foreign cars. So people just go out and buy American cars. You're not going to have a problem with it. So that's it. That's my story.
Thanks for the briefing.
I'm sticking to it.
I'm glad to have it. Let's go to Sandra in New Jersey.
Hi, Sandra.
Oh, hello, Dick. Hello, Doug. Doug, happy birthday tomorrow, if I'm correct.
Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Happy birthday Tuesday.
Thank
You're welcome. I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind. After World War II, conservatives focused on businesses, you know, making money in business, and the liberals got themselves involved in the academia and the cultural institutions. And what we did, what the conservatives did was we weren't keeping our eye on the ball.
Right.
So all those years when they were in the colleges, you know, we weren't watching what they were doing, and now it became crazy.
Yep.
So going forward, with Donald Trump, you know, canceling the $400 million, and we have their ears, we should now try to get people, semi-retired professionals, to get involved in the institution. In other words, we need checks and balances. It's all one way.
Well, I agree with you completely. I think that one of the things we should do is Trump should demand that hiring of faculty in these universities reflect ideological diversity as well as racial and gender diversity. In 1980, I forget the year John Kerry ran for president. After the election, I gave a speech at Williams University. And after the speech, I had lunch with the president of the university and with the head of the political science department. And I said, how do you think your faculty voted in the election we just had? And they said, oh, I hope unanimously. I said, for who? And he said, for Kerry. And I said, what do you mean unanimously? Are there no conservatives on your faculty?
Right.
No Republicans?
There was one.
And the head of the political science department said, I hope not. He said, we do everything we can to make sure there aren't. I said, do you guys mean that you have gender diversity, racial diversity, handicap diversity, sexual orientation diversity, but in the political science department you don't have political diversity?
Wow.
And he said, no, we hope not. And that's the key thing. And these universities don't grant PhDs to conservatives. They don't accept dissertation topics on conservative issues. And as a result, only liberals get PhDs.
Unbelievable.
And only liberals get hired by these schools. Now, I think what Trump should do...
And hold on. And the liberals that are now teaching our kids are teaching them to be liberals. That's the problem.
That's
They're
right.
indoctrinating our kids for the last 40 years or
Exactly.
more.
So I think that Trump should say that every school that has federal aid or federal scholarships cannot discriminate against conservatives or Republicans in their hiring practices. They can't discriminate based on skin color or race or religion. Add political orientation to it so that there is no effort to discriminate based on a political point of view.
Oh, the left is going to hate that.
Particularly when you're talking about the political science department, because you've got to assure that there's a balanced point of view. And I think that that's the long-term answer to the question Sandra is raising.
That's a great question.
Go ahead, Doug.
So HUD is to slash housing aid for sanctuary cities. I love it. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, is ramping up its enforcement and implementation of Donald Trump's executive order for illegal immigrants from receiving federal assistance, including public housing and HUD grant programs. HUD Secretary Scott Turner will send a letter outlining the changes obtained by the Washington Examiner Friday afternoon to every public housing authority and grantee at the department's Office of Public and Indian Housing.
Yep.
So
that is great. So you can't have a sanctuary city and get Section 8 rent subsidy money. If you want to subsidize public housing in your city, you can, but you can't do it with federal money. And you can't do it as long as you're a sanctuary city. Absolutely great policy.
it's amazing.
Okay, when we come back, we'll talk about the success of Trump's deportation programs.
And he arrested more than 100,000. So Trump's new administration...
In other words, 100,000 he's deported, thrown out,
and he also...
and he's arrested another 100.
Right, so 200 all in all at that point. And so they deported over 100,000 illegal migrants since taking office January 20th, and arrested more than 110,000. The news comes from illegal border, as illegal border crossing hit a new low under the Trump administration, with Border Patrol reportedly encountering just 7,000 migrants in March, and it's a far cry from the more than 11,000 a day. So 7,000 the whole month of March, and Holman said it's a far cry from the more than 11,000 a day that we saw for a time period under Biden. The men and women of the Border Patrol have proven that if we unshackle them, they can accomplish what they're allowed to accomplish. They could do their job now that their hands aren't tied.
I mean, it's so rare in politics.
That's Holman talking.
It's so rare in politics that you have a problem that is completely solved.
Like immediately.
Immediately, SOLVED, solved. Not made better, not temporized, not postponed,
Right.
not kicked down the road, but just freaking solved.
Yes.
And the election of Donald Trump solved the problem of illegal immigration. That was the number 2 issue in the country. The number 1 issue was inflation, that now is at 0. So it's double zero. 0 inflation and 0 illegal immigrants.
And you know what it is, too? It didn't even cost them any money, really. Maybe a little bit, for weapons and electronics to deal with the border. But basically, they just told the men and women of Border Patrol, we got you back.
Yeah.
Go after these people. Don't sit around and take numbers and, talk to them and send them on buses. We got you back. Send them back. And they did it.
Yeah.
It's not like they built more walls and did anything. It just did
It
it.
is absolutely incredible.
It's amazing, just the attitude.
Let's go to Michael in Rockaway.
Hey, Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hey guys, how are you guys doing today?
Good.
Good.
Thanks for calling.
Everybody healthy?
Yeah, come on. What's up?
What do you got?
New York State and all the other states, if they went through a Doge-like audit,
Yeah.
I would wonder what the impact would be. New York State is $180 billion in debt, number 2 after California. That's 9,000 for every New York in the state, and that's just on the state level. That doesn't include the cities and the agencies and the departments, the MTA, the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority.
You are so right.
The Housing Authority.
You are so right. If Musk has been able to do this at the federal level, imagine what you could do at the state and local level.
Yeah, right.
Bear in mind that the federal government doesn't do a whole lot. It basically funds state and local governments that do the actual work.
Which is better anyway.
That's how the system works. The federal government runs the post office, the armed services, the tariff system, the Treasury, the IRS, stuff like that. But when it comes to running the sanitation department, the police department, the fire department, and all of the various agencies that directly impact people's lives, the prison system, that's all run by the state and federal governments. So they need Doge operations. They need the same kind of stuff going on. And to do that, you need to import a bunch of brainiacs and get them hired by the state and local government to do that. The reason they won't do it is simply because of the political influence of the municipal unions that won't allow that to happen.
Why? What's that?
Well, they want to protect their jobs. Their goal, the only way you cut spending at that level is you cut jobs, and they don't want to cut them. Now, sometimes when we say cut jobs, we don't mean fire people. We mean close the job down as they retire, and that does a lot of it. But a lot of times it means firing people, and the unions are determined to avoid it, and they want us to continue to pay the bill. Since the 1900s, since the 20th century, the number of American workers in private sector unions has dropped from about 20% to about 7%. And the number of municipal workers in unions has risen from about 10% to about 40%. So more and more the union movement is entirely composed of public sector workers. And the reason they do it is that they can strike against a private company, and that company has to play ball, has to negotiate. But when they strike against the government, they're really striking against the people. And the government is elected by the voters, and the local and state governments don't negotiate strongly. It's like the union controls both ends of the talks,
Right.
Labor and management. So the mayors and the governors give them all the stuff that they want, keep the phony jobs on the payroll, keep people working who shouldn't be working, keep raising money, because they can get a limitless okay from the voters.
They're hacking the system.
And that can only be changed if you set up a Doge kind of system that moves in and stops this stuff from happening.
And that's why all these people are hating it. All the Dems are.
You're so right.
So
Okay,
anyway,
but-
let me just throw out the call-in number for all our callers out there. It's 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. That's a call-in number. Please.
So there were a whole lot of, the House of Representatives is only narrowly Republican. We had a one-seat majority. Now we won 2 special elections, so now it's a 3-seat majority. But out of 435 congressmen, that's not so good. Now, so the Democrats were all hot and heavy that they're going to take back the House next year. But House Democrats from all over the country are abandoning their seats to run for statewide office, creating a nightmare scenario for the Democrats. In New Hampshire, Chris Pappas, a Democratic congressman, announced he would run for the Senate. In New Hampshire, a Democratic congresswoman announced she's going to run for the Senate. In Ohio, another Democrat said he's going to leave his swing seat and run for governor of Ohio. Another Ohio, fresh off a 2-point re-election victory in a swing district, Congressman Amelia Sykes is also reported to have looked at abandoning the House. 4th-term Congressman Angie Craig from Minnesota, Democrat, says she's going to run for the Senate. Representative Kristen McConnell-Rivet, a Democrat from Michigan, said that she's going to run for the Senate. So you have all of these congressmen, 5 or 6 of them now, who are in swing districts, got elected by the skin of their teeth last time, and they're saying, next time I'm going to run for the Senate. If I'm going to be in a close race that I might lose and end my political career if I do lose it, why don't I make it for something worthwhile like a Senate seat, not a House seat? And they're leaving the House, and we know that in an election, the open seats are the best chance for a party to gain power. Very hard to knock off an incumbent congressman, but comparatively easy to be able to take an open seat. Now, when we come back, we're going to have an interview with
Mike Lawler. And I got him finally.
Lawler is the congressman for Rockland County and Putnam.
Right.
And he's a newly elected Republican conservative. He's now seeking his 3rd term. And the rumor, which I hope is true, is that he's going to run for governor of New York.
That's what we want.
And I think that he's going to be the Republican candidate. And I think he has a very good chance of being elected governor of New York. So we invited him to come on the show because we'd like you to get to know him, because Mike Lawler is the hope of New York in the future. The caller we just had it right, which is you need a DOJ for its agency for New York State and New York City.
Yeah.
And a guy like Lawler will do it. In fact, when he comes on, we'll ask him what he thinks about that. So stick around, and we'll have Mike Lawler on in a minute.
Okay, great.
Welcome to the Dick Morris Show with Doug DePiro, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. The Democrats in the latest Rasmussen poll want their party to be more moderate. 59% of likely U.S. Democratic voters said they believe the Democratic Party needs to be more moderate, while only 27% of the Democrats say they need to be more liberal. So the Democrats are getting the message. Too bad the leadership hasn't gotten it.
Yeah.
And I believe that the Democratic primary is moving to the left. In other words, when a party wins an election, the people in the losing party tend to leave that party and join the other party. And that means that the people who are the moderates, the sane people, the good-thinking people, leave the party that lost and join the party that won. And that means the ones left in the old party that lost become more and more crazy.
Right.
It's only the real crazy leftists who stay in the Democratic Party. That happened in 1972, when in 1968 Nixon defeated Humphrey, and then by 72 so many moderates had left the Democratic primary that George McGovern defeated Hubert Humphrey for the nomination, and the Democratic Party got so far left that they got clobbered. And then it happened again in 1980.
Well, then you got Carter also.
It happened again in 1980 when Reagan defeated Carter. and Democrats left the Democratic primary attracted by Reagan. They began to vote for Reagan, like my buddy here, Doug DePiro, did.
Oh, it was great.
And that meant that the Democratic primary became much, much more liberal. Only the crazies stayed in it. The lunatics took over the asylum.
And now you got AOC.
And that's why they
right?
nominated McGovern and Dukakis. And now you have AOC, who's still in the Democratic
No, I'm sorry,
Party.
AOC.
And so many have left the Democratic primary and become Republicans or independents that I think that AOC has a very good chance of knocking off Schumer in 28 or maybe being the Democratic candidate for president.
Oh, my God.
God help us.
Anyway, we got Mike Lawler on the line.
Good.
Dick. So
we're on with Mike Lawler, the congressman for Rockland County, Putnam County, and that area.
Hey, Mike.
Welcome, Mike. How you doing?
Hey, guys. How are you?
Good. I just want to, first of all, just say that I'm a Mike Lawler fan. And I helped this guy get elected. I watched him get reelected. And he's grown so much in the job. He's become a major force in Washington and a major statesman in the area.
I believe
and
that also.
I am very, very, very much looking forward to Mike if he decides to run for governor of New York. He's going to have my full support, and I think that he'll win it without a primary.
And Mike, we need you on that wall.
Well, I appreciate that, Dick.
Wonderful
Thank you
to
for
watch that.
the very gracious words, and certainly for the support over the years.
So with the major changes that Trump has brought about, the huge tariffs and the deportations, how do you think he's doing so far?
Well, I think overall he's doing very well. Obviously, when you look at the border crisis, that was one of the biggest issues of the election. And frankly, the fact that the media is not even talking about it speaks volumes to how well they've done on stopping.
Yeah. One of the only examples I can think of a problem that was totally solved, not a little bit, not a 10-year plan, not a 5-year plan, but totally solved in 2 months.
I know.
Well, this goes to what we were saying, when the Democrats were trying to put forth this quote-unquote bipartisan bill that would have codified catch and release into law. And we were saying you don't need to do that. You just need to enforce the law.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, the president has taken significant steps to do that, and his administration, and deporting criminal aliens, as well as those who have had previous deportation orders against them. So, they've made significant progress of not only getting the criminals out of our country, but stopping the influx, because folks realize that they're not going to be able to just be released into the country.
Right.
He has forced Mexico and Canada to start engaging in serious efforts to control the border and stop the flow of fentanyl and other deadly drugs coming in.
And on top of that, he's got a 00 going on. There's zero inflation in the last reports. Now, the economists always say, oh, my goodness, wait till the tariffs hit. But that is just posturing. The fact of the matter is that inflation in the United States is basically at zero and has been for the last 2 or 3 months.
Inflation has come down. Prices are coming down. Look, long term, obviously, if we're in a trade war, that's not good. But I think he is changing the trajectory here with what he's trying to do, and force these other countries, including many countries that are allies that have obviously done well from trade with the United States, to change their practices. When you have barriers to entry, where you have American cars, for instance, not being seen or available in Japan, and price controls in Europe. And you see what they have done to block, our ag markets and beef, for instance, in Australia and Europe. These are significant issues. And so when we talk about fair trade, this is, frankly, what it requires to push back and to force them back to the negotiating table. And I think you're going to see very quickly.
From the point of view of macroeconomics, every president has a problem, which is if you stimulate the economy, you create jobs, but you do it too much, you create inflation. So what Trump is saying is, I'm going to increase buying power in the United States. I'm going to increase the amount that of American companies can sell. But I'm going to do it in foreign countries. I'm going to do it by increasing tariffs so the consumers in other countries buy our products. And we don't have to force feed the economy in the United States and cause inflation. And at the same time, I'm not going to impose the tariffs on countries that play ball with us and that don't and that keep their tariffs down. With those countries, I'll let their products in, and with the others, I'll keep them out, so that more and more countries are investing in the U.S., building plants and equipment here, hiring people here, manufacturing here, because they know if they do it abroad, they're going to hit with tariffs. And those two initiatives, increasing jobs on the supply side and laying off demand into other countries, I think are the formula for economic growth without inflation that Trump is achieving.
No question. And I think, obviously, Democrats for years talked about, how bad, these trade deals were and how we outsourced our jobs to other countries. Well, this is going to force investment back into the United States. It's going to force companies to create jobs here, which, frankly, is better than paying them billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies to do it.
Yep.
And that's, this is a change. And Wall Street, obviously, in the immediate, yes, they're having a negative reaction. But the fact is that if very quickly Donald Trump is able to force other countries to the negotiating table, if we get trade deals that result in lower tariffs on U.S. goods, that is a positive. And
like Vietnam is just done, Israel's just done. It's very impressive.
India, Vietnam.
India. So, Mike, a caller a few minutes ago called in and said, why don't we have a DOGE, D-O-G-E, the Department of Government Efficiency, in New York State? We have all this huge debt, more debt than any state except California. Why don't we rein in state spending in New Albany the way we're doing it in Washington? What do you think about that?
New York needs it. And I wouldn't call it Doge. I would call it enema. The fact is, New York needs a complete overhaul. They have increased state spending by $100 billion in a decade. Our state budget is being proposed by the governor and the legislature to be at $260 billion, more than double the size of Florida, despite having 3 million less in population. The fact is, it's unsustainable. We lead the nation in out-migration. We have the highest tax burden in the country, the worst business climate. The quality of life has declined precipitously because of issues like crime and the migrant crisis. New York is spending billions of dollars of taxpayer money on free housing, clothing, food, education, and health care for illegal immigrants. It's not sustainable. Look, we live in the greatest state in the country, and New York has everything right there at your fingertips.
Yep.
But there's a reason people are leaving, and it has nothing to do with the weather. It has everything to do with the cost of living and the quality of life. And if we don't reverse course and we don't start to right-size government in New York and start to reduce the overall tax burden, cut regulations. I mean, New York has over 1 million business regulations on the books. You look at energy policy. They have shut down nuclear power. They've blocked natural gas.
They blocked fracking.
Created a calamity where utility costs have skyrocketed as a result.
You look at outstate Pennsylvania, Allentown, and places like that. There are millionaires overnight
from the fracking.
Mm-hmm. And yet Cuomo and Hochul have stopped fracking dead in New York State.
Well, and it was foolish because if you look at the value of one's home in upstate New York, it has declined while taxes have risen to pay for all the services that are needed. And folks are struggling. They need jobs. They need economic opportunity. Energy is critical. And we can have an all-of-the-above approach. We can have renewables. We can have solar and hydro and wind. but you need natural gas, you need nuclear power, you need to reduce the overall cost of utilities to bring back manufacturing to this state. Right. Upstate New York used to be filled from one community to the next with manufacturing, and it is depleted over 3 decades.
So what do you think of the idea of a DOGE commission for New York?
The Enema Commission, and you put in.
Look, New York needs a complete overhaul, and you need to, I've said this for years, you can call it whatever you want. The fact is that you need to actually employ a serious line-by-line, department-by-department, agency-by-agency review. You look at the MTA. They carry more debt than 80% of the states in the country. Think about that. Really? One authority carries more debt than 80% of the states, and their sole focus is on transportation in the city and the surrounding suburbs. It's insane what has happened in New York because of feckless leadership like Kathy Hochul. Andrew Cuomo signed so many of these disastrous policies into law, from congestion pricing to cashless bail. He made New York a sanctuary state. Yep. Now he acts like he had nothing to do with any of it. But the fact is that these policies under one-party Democratic rule have been disastrous. And so you need a comprehensive review. You need a complete forensic audit of all of the spending in New York. We want to make sure that we take care of those who need help. There's no question about that. That is the role of government. But you have to make sure that you are spending taxpayer money wisely and efficiently, and that the people who need these services, from the IDD community to our seniors to our veterans, that we have the resources to take care of them, and that we're not wasting taxpayer money like $100 million on political campaigns. I mean, they're spending $100 million annually on taxpayer-funded political campaigns. It's insane.
That's like cows being fed their cud.
Exactly.
We need you to be strong and do it. Do
Mike,
exactly what you're saying when you become
one
governor.
of your people mentioned to me the idea that Hochul is releasing a lot of inmates. Tell us about that.
Why don't we go to break, and we'll have you come back right after break. What do you say, Mike? Hang out for another couple of minutes?
Yep. Sounds good.
Great.
Sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group, we have Congressman Mike Lawler from Rockland County.
And Mike, I just want to say to you that you're in great company, because I use that. We need you on the wall for my good friend General Flynn. So I just want you to know that.
So tell us about Hochul releasing inmates. I didn't know about that.
Well, it's just it just speaks to the insanity of New York. A few years ago, the state legislature passed the HALT Act, basically prohibiting corrections officers from using punitive segregation or solitary confinement, with the worst of the worst, and those committing offenses while in prison. And that, has made the jails and prisons less safe around the state. You saw a few weeks ago the corrections officers go on strike. Governor Hochul, rather than actually addressing the challenges, fired over 2,000 corrections officers for refusing to go to work. And now, as a result of not having enough corrections officers, she is releasing prisoners early.
No way.
And it's insane. It is emblematic of the problems in New York. I'm sorry?
How many is she releasing?
Well, they're going through the process now, but they put out a memo this week announcing that they're going to start releasing prisoners. And it's crazy, and just speaks volumes, again, to the ineptitude of Kathy Hochul and her administration when it comes to dealing with the challenges, especially around public safety. Right now in the legislature, in the budget, they're talking about changes to Discovery to actually fix some of the problems. But she's getting pushback from members of the legislature. And instead of using the power vested in her under court case Pataki v. Silver, she could jam this through, and she just doesn't have the competence or ability to do it. And it's just this is why New York continues to flounder.
Interesting. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the big issue going on in Washington, of course, is the Democratic contention that Trump is cutting Medicaid. And I emphasize that all he's doing is probably restoring Medicaid to the size it was when Obama took office and decided to expand it, or decided to cut the federal share, decided to cut the state share of Medicaid so that it basically became a federal program. What do you think about that?
Yeah, on the expansion population, the federal share rose to 90%, so it's a 90-10 federal share.
Used to be 50-50.
In a state like New York, Medicaid has grown significantly. New York has the most expansive Medicaid program in the country. We pay 83% more for Medicaid services than the average of the other 49 states. So it's a very expensive program. Many people rely on it. They need it. These are critical services for our seniors, those in the IDD community.
But I want to interrupt you for a second.
Children.
None of the cuts anybody's talking about will probably affect nursing homes.
So what we're talking about, though, is in across the country, for instance, almost $7 billion being spent on Medicaid benefits for illegal immigrants.
Yeah,
including over $1.2 billion here in New York. And those are decisions, that the state makes. The state is administering the program. But President Trump is talking about requiring citizenship verification for Medicaid benefits. He's talking about, work requirements. This is something, Dick, you certainly would remember under Bill Clinton. They championed work requirements. Yep. So this is not, we're not talking about cutting benefits from folks who are eligible and need them. We're talking about making sure that the system is sustainable for those who need it, and that people are not fleecing taxpayers out of these benefits and really driving the system downward. Look at the cost. It has become exorbitant, and we want to make sure these programs are sustainable for the people who need and require them.
One of the other things I want to ask you about is the congestion tax. Trump initially threatened to withhold federal approval for the congestion tax, and now he's given Hochul, I think, 30 more days to review it. I hope that he knocks out the congestion tax and uses federal authority to do it. What do you think?
Look, it's a scam. It's nothing more than a cash grab. Again, the MTA is the worst-run authority in America. Even with this congestion tax, right? The objective is to raise $1 billion in revenue to borrow $15 billion more, and yet they're telling us they're still, tens of billions of dollars short for their capital program. They have no ability to manage this system effectively. Janno Lieber needs to be fired. He is a complete ignoramus, and really has run the system into the ground. But the fact is that, as I said, they carry debt greater than 80% of the states, and what they're talking about doing is adding more debt to the system without any plan to fix it and fix the problems in the system. They lose $700 million a year to those who jump the turnstiles and refuse to pay to ride the system. They put in a filing that they lost $1.4 billion to those who evaded tolls. The fact is, it's not sustainable like this, and they need to do a much better job of managing the system. The congestion pricing scam is not doing anything other than raising money. They talk about how it's reduced the flow of traffic. The fact is, it has shifted traffic to other parts of Manhattan and other parts of the city, as we said it would. And so the immediate short-term gain on that front is certainly going to be offset in other areas. But long-term, as this tax stays, if it stays in effect too long, people will adjust and they'll pay it, as part of their.
Well, I think the big thing is the
cost.
Easy Pass that makes paying tolls and taxes painless,
invisible,
and used to be a big deal when they raised the subway fare. But now with Easy Pass,
you don't know.
You don't even know it. So it's kind of funny.
Beyond Easy Pass, they're doing tolls by mail. And so as a result of that, you have a lot of people not paying the toll.
Yep.
At least with the Easy Pass, it's connected to your credit card.
Right. You know, Mike, I listened to you talk about this. It's impossible for me to believe that people wouldn't vote for you.
Yeah.
You know, would vote for someone like Hochul.
Well, I think that
he makes such sense.
There is no strong Republican candidate talking about running for governor. I think that it's going to be. I think that Lola will be the Republican candidate. I think that it's going to be a Republican year. I think Hochul has slipped badly, and I just pray that Mike decides to run. Well, thank you, sir. It's great having you on.
I appreciate it, and we'll keep you posted.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye-bye.
This is great.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
All right, man.
Now, a judge has just disregarded.
By the way, that was great. He was fantastic.
He's a fabulous
guy.
That
was really. And once again, I have to say that it's hard for me to understand how people listening to him, we just listened to just now, everything he talked about, that they wouldn't say, I'm a Democrat and I like Hochul, but this guy makes a lot of sense and he's going to help so many things. It's hard for me to understand how Democrats, their mindset.
Let's understand who Hochul is.
No, I'm talking about the mindset of the voters.
Yeah, okay, but let's understand who Hochul is. He was the last-minute understudy who nobody ever thought would be governor. Cuomo put her on to balance the ticket with an upstate woman.
Right.
And then when he was forced out, bang, she becomes governor with no qualifications. Now, while this is happening, a judge is totally disregarding the law in stopping Trump deportations of Venezuelan gang members. Lux, who are basically taking gang members and requiring that Trump keep them in the United States.
Another mindset. Why? Why would they have that?
This one, the why, is even worse. A judge is barring Trump from ending the Temporary Protected Status, TPS, amnesty given to 500,000 Venezuelans, including Tren de Agua gangsters by Biden's deputies. A California-based U.S. District Court Judge, Edward Chen, cited the migrants' economic activity as if that entitled them to legal status.
Right.
He said, they're wonderful people. They have higher educational attainment than most Americans and higher labor force participation rate, and annually contribute billions to the U.S. economy and pay hundreds of millions, if not billions, in Social Security. What the hell does that have to do with it? We're not doing a contest here for whether we like them or not. There's a law that says they're not allowed to come into the United States and was waived by President Biden. And because he waived it so widely, huge number of gang members and criminals are coming into the United States. Stephen Miller, Trump's policy chief on illegal immigration, said Biden imported masses of illegals from Venezuela, including criminals, gave them welfare and Social Security numbers. Trump won an election promising to end the invasion. A rogue Marxist judge just ordered Biden's amnesty continued. The judge blocked Trump's plan to start ending the TPS status next month by arguing that the enforcement of Americans' laws would be bad. The court finds that the secretary's action threatened to inflict irreparable harm on hundreds of thousands of persons whose families, lives, and livelihood could be severely disrupted, cost the U.S. billions in economic activity. Well, Your Honor, you ran for the wrong office. You shouldn't have run for judge. You should have run for president with that platform and see if people go for it. In reality, the mass inflow of 530,000 migrants into the U.S. has pushed down wages for American families and also pushed up their housing costs. One result is greater economic pressure against the creation of new families and the birth of American children. Some of the Venezuelan migrants have preyed on or murdered Americans, for example, Laken Riley, and the continuing stay of migrants could inflict crimes on ordinary Americans. The judge is completely disregarding the law. This is a judge who wants to be president rather than judge, and he's acting like he is president. Meantime, Jim Jordan, the congressman from Ohio, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, says that he believes Congress has the will to use its constitutional power to prevent judicial overreach at the district court level to usurp Trump's authority. Since Trump began his second term on January 20th, lower court judges have issued 15 injunctions against his policies. One case involved a temporary injunction by U.S. District Court Judge James Boasberg in Washington against deporting illegal immigrants who were members of the Tren del Agua gang.
What's his name? Bozo? James
Yeah, Bozo, right. Boasberg ordered deportation flights headed to El Salvador back into the U.S., and Trump ignored the order. With the judge's situation, we've got Darrell Iss's bill, Jordan said, that would say, for these district judges, to issue an injunction, it applies only to the parties in the case in that jurisdiction. It does not apply and should not apply nationwide. The Congress has the authority to regulate how federal courts exercise judicial power. And we've got to look at everything else Jordan said. We've got to look at the appropriation process and, frankly, draw attention to this issue. So you can't have one district court judge located in Podunk change the policy for the United States, especially overruling the elected president. Doug, what's going on at Harvard?
Well, he's got a target on Harvard right now. The Trump administration is turning its sights to Harvard University, opening a review of nearly $9 billion in federal grants and contracts as a part of its investigation into how schools have handled anti-Semitism. The administration said it would examine $255 million in current contracts and $8.7 billion in grants spread over multiple years. That money is spread among Harvard and its affiliates, which include Boston area hospitals. The move places Harvard alongside Columbia University in Trump's crosshairs as a fight brews over the future of higher education. Earlier this month, the government canceled $400 million in grants and contracts with Columbia over anti-Semitism. Columbia agreed to meet a series of far-reaching government demands as a precondition to negotiate for the return of the money. Can I have some more money, please? Mm-hmm. The government so far is reviewing, not canceling the grants and contracts at Harvard like they did with Columbia. The money was definitely canceled, so that's what he did. He canceled the money there. Now he goes to the other schools and says, see what I did over there?
Yeah.
Let's make it do over here.
I'll
so
do
that's
it
what he's,
do
right?
It. You're next.
Yeah, you're next.
You're
right.
next.
Harvard, excuse me, was one of 60 schools the education department contacted earlier this month, warning them of potential enforcement actions if they don't adequately protect Jewish students on campus, which I cannot believe that they do not, but whatever. The concerns arose after pro-Palestinian protests disrupted campuses nationwide last year.
This is the world coming around. In the 50s and 60s and 70s, the Protestant or Catholic leadership in these schools said, we don't want a lot of Jews here. They're pushy, they're smelly, they're not our sort of people. We're going to limit the number of Jews so they don't take over our schools. And then when Jews began to assume a larger and larger role, the universities said, we're going to quota them. We're not going to let a large number of Jews in. Now they got in, and the anti-Semites on campus, led by the Palestinian students who were imported into the United States and study here at our sufferance, are engaging in the same kind of anti-Semitic stuff that they pulled in Gaza and they pulled in the Middle East.
Well, Trump's administration recently formed the anti-Semitism task force, and the guy said, what's his name, Josh Grubaum, we will not hesitate to act if Harvard fails to do so. Trump vowed to rid elite campuses of what he views as the left-wing ideology, and made it a series of moves aimed at doing so. Early this month, his administration paused about $175 million in federal funding to the University of Pennsylvania for allowing transgender athletes to compete in women's swimming. So he's going at it. He's not going to let these universities,
And when we get back, we'll talk about the broader offense that Trump is launching against big university endowments. That's even more significant.
And the Democrats are going to love it because, pay your fair share of taxes. So we'll talk about that.
Sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
So the Dems are going to love this. Big tax hikes for the universities, endowments. Universities thrown into turmoil by the Trump administration. Funding cuts are now facing a new and possibly larger threat in the form of tax hike from the Republican Congress. Republicans are weighing in a major increase in the tax on big university endowments. So the Democrats should love this, right? Pay your fair share type of thing, as well as a raft of other measures to raise revenues from higher education.
We now have a 1.4% excise tax on the investment income of universities and colleges, with endowment assets exceeding $500,000 per student. But now the Republicans want to raise that tax from 1.4% to 21% to be added to the tax bill Republicans are passing. The Republicans said that raising the tax rate for 21% would bring it in line with the rate paid by for-profit corporations, which was set at 21% in the Trump tax overhaul. The change would raise about $70 billion over the next decade. In its current form, the tax bill has not even raised $1 billion.
Wow, so $70 billion.
And it's a huge thing. The universities can live without the contracts, but they can't live without the endowments. And going after the endowments, Trump is really going after pay dirt.
Beautiful. Now, Musk says 2.1 million non-citizens got Social Security numbers. I can't believe this. Approximately 2.1 million non-citizens reportedly obtained Social Security numbers in 2024, according to the investigation by the Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE. Musk said this wasn't an accident. This was a massive, large-scale program under the Biden administration to import as many illegals as possible, ultimately to change the voting map of the United States, disenfranchising the American people, and lock in a permanent deep blue one-party state from which there would be no escape. See, that's crazy. While only 270,000 non-citizens received Social Security numbers in 21, the figure surged to 2.1 million, from 270,000 to 2.1 million in 2024. We found that 1.3 million of them already were on Medicaid, as an example. On every benefit program we went through, we found groups from this particular group of people, 5.5 million people in those benefit programs.
So when Trump is talking about cutting Medicaid, and the Democrats are going crazy over it, he's not cutting Medicaid. He's cutting payments to illegal immigrants, non-citizens, who pretend they're citizens in order to get Medicaid benefits.
Right, that's right. So now Tulsi, I love her. Yanked security clearances. This is great. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, dropped a bombshell announcement that sent shockwaves through Washington's political class. I love it. In a decisive move directed by President Trump, Gabbard revoked security clearance for the who's list of political adversity. I have revoked, this is her speaking, I have revoked former President Joe Biden's security clearance and revoked clearances and access to classified information for Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Fiona Hill, and Alexander Vindman. That's amazing that they did that.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
It's great.
Trump's got it, boy. Let me tell you. He ain't messing with anything. Where are we going? We're going on this one? The Republican states moved to get non-citizen voters off the rolls. So Idaho and Missouri have removed 300,000 people from the voter rolls. Collectively, the GOP-led states of Idaho and Missouri took nearly 300,000 registrations off the voter rolls after finding inactive, ineligible, or deceased voters. Deceased. How'd that paper look?
So while the states are cleaning their voter rolls so the Democrats can't fix elections, Trump is moving ahead aggressively to keep his campaign promises. And one of the big ones was to end the war in Ukraine. So in a big blow-up at the Oval Office, he hollered at Medvedevsky, hollered at the Ukrainian government for not being willing to share the profits from its rare earth mineral deposits. And he said Zelensky was embarrassing him in the Oval Office. And then he went back to Russia, which told them, we're not going to go along with your demands. We're not going to let you have a ceasefire. We want permanent acquisition of territory from Ukraine. And suddenly Russia became really aggressive against the U.S. And Trump is mad at Russia. He's weighing all-out economic assault on the livelihood of the Russian economy, its energy exports, in what analysts say would be a dramatic, potentially high-risk move to influence the Kremlin's decision-making and force it to end the war in Ukraine. With strong backing from a bipartisan coalition in Congress, Trump has floated massive financial penalties against Russia's energy secretary and any country that does business with it. For the president, it appears to be something of a last resort, a step he'll take only if Putin refuses to sign a deal halting the hostilities in Ukraine. Russia is entirely dependent on its oil and gas industry. Russia is basically a gas station. And if Trump announces a policy that if you buy oil or gas from Russia, you can't do business in the United States.
Like you did with Iran.
Putin is kaput.
Right.
So
Right,
when we get back, we're going to talk about the next generation nuclear reactors,
And
mini reactors.
And Trump said, why don't you just meet me in the middle?
There's something brand new in the energy world that's really exciting and worth talking about. You remember the guy we were working for in Nevada named Jim Marchant, who was running for the Senate? He was pushing this idea. And now a manufacturing plant in Texas plans to power its production with an advanced nuclear reactor, a small reactor. It's a grid-scale advanced nuclear reactor to power a 4,000-acre facility that produces plastics. So what they're doing is, instead of building these massive nuclear reactors, they're building small reactors on specific sites for specific industries. The permit's the first step in an anticipated resurgence in nuclear power. Trump initiated the nuclear power comeback during his first term, and nuclear power is now set to skyrocket as the president seeks to rebuild the U.S. manufacturing base. The CEO of one of the energy companies said the project will demonstrate how the technology deployed can quickly and efficiently be replicated to meet incredible power demand across America. Enabling commercial nuclear power projects is top priority of the Energy Department, and the department worked diligently and creatively to enable the rapid deployment and export of next-generation nuclear technology. He's following orders from Trump, who days into his administration said he would use an emergency declaration to expedite the building of plants. The technology has been developed for years, but never been deployed in the United States. They're smaller than traditional water-fueled nuclear plants and can be built quicker and cheaper. They can use a variety of coolants, so they don't need to position near large water sources. And they produce about a third of the energy of a traditional nuclear reactor. So this is a huge change, a big, gigantic change in the energy sector in the United States.
You know what, Dick? This week, I'm going to look into these a lot and look at the waste and all of that, because these sound great.
So
I got to do my
when
homework.
we come back, we're going to talk about the HHS cuts that Kennedy is imposing.
No more breaks, Dicks. We're good.
Oh, good.
We can continue.
Go ahead.
All right. The HHS staff cuts just...
Yeah. Background on this is that everybody's hollering that Kennedy is cutting the HHS, Health and Human Services staff. But it turns out that all he's doing is undoing the growth that took place under Obama and Biden.
Yes, 60 to 80,000 it rose, the staff rose. Now Kennedy's just, doing away and cutting back what that was. And not for nothing, but Clinton lowered the HHS staff from 85,000 to 55,000. So let's see what the Democrats have to say about that.
Now, there's a really important new development going on in Gaza. After decades of taking all the crap that Hamas was passing out to the residents of Gaza, finally, there's been a red demonstration where Gaza citizens are saying to Hamas, get the hell out and stop creating war.
Bye-bye.
That results in our getting killed. Starting on March 25th, crowds of overwhelmingly young black male Gazans have marched by the thousands through streets, flanked by destroyed buildings, bellowing out slogans and carrying signs. Proceeding peacefully with uncovered faces in broad daylight,
wow,
speaking angrily into close-up video cameras, they assail not just Israel but Hamas, their jihadist overlords. If Jerusalem pays them attention, their protests could mark a turning point in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. This story is from Daniel Pipes, who is an expert on the Middle East. It's about damn time that the residents of Hamas said, get off our back and stop creating wars that we have to suffer for. Doug?
And they do suffer, boy. So, as a part of a bold shift in the U.S. trade policy, Trump has ramped up tariffs on Chinese goods, aiming to revive domestic manufacturing and hold Beijing accountable for its decades of market-distorting practices. At the April 2nd Make America Wealthy Again event in the White House, in Rose Garden, Trump unveiled the contours of his global tariff plans, including a 34% reciprocal levy on Beijing. The president pointed to China's currency manipulation and other non-monetary trade barriers. This decision effectively raised the total new tariffs on China to 54%, including 20% levies previously imposed to pressure Beijing into reducing the flow of fentanyl into the United States. This move will definitely impact the approximately $600 billion in annual trade and bring tariffs on nearly all Chinese goods close to the 60% rate Trump had previously promised during his campaign. So good.
In the United States, 80% of our production of goods and services is consumed by Americans. In China, 30% of their production is consumed by Chinese. They export the rest. So if you start stopping China from exporting and you put tariffs on their exports, China will fall apart. It's already in an economic recession brought on by the tariffs Trump imposed in the first term.
Wow.
And now he's going to do the coup de grace, which could be wonderful against China. This is the equivalent of sending the Marines to land in China. But we don't lose American lives. We just force the Chinese to change. One of the places that could use Trump's efforts is France. In France, there has been a growing movement for Le Pen, the right-wing conservative whose views basically are similar to Trump. And the leader, the far-right leader, Marine Le Pen, died, and his daughter Marine Le Pen is taking his place. And now on trumped-up charges, the French government has convicted her of embezzlement and disqualified her from running for office. And this is just absolute censorship and the intervening in democracy. The world is an economic democracy. The markets control the world, and the markets can determine economic policy. But in politics, we are not a world democracy. We have no democracy. We have damn little The U.S. is democratic, Britain is democratic, but France, for example, isn't democratic. They just ruled that the major opposition figure can't run for public office. And Italy's not a democracy, and Germany's not a democracy. We are damn near alone in the world with Britain as being a democracy. And now these other countries are experiencing the same kind of revolt of their populations that led to Donald Trump's election in the U.S. And conservatives are winning those elections, populists are winning the elections, and the European leadership is saying we're going to solve the problem by eliminating the elections.
So let me ask you, Dick.
In Romania, they disqualified a guy from running, and now in France, they're pulling the same garbage.
So we're saying in the topic, Trump and Musk back Francis Le Pen. What do you see happening just because they're backing him? It's just backing him, it doesn't matter?
The other thing they're trying to do is censor Elon Musk. During his time at Musk, he's focused on dropping content moderation policies that once restricted hate speech and misinformation. Now the EU enforcement is trying to adopt the same policies against X, the successor to Twitter.
Right.
This week, X called the EU regulation an unprecedented act of political censorship and an attack on free speech. And Musk said, but I'm fascinated by this. I'm eager to see how it plays out. These are two very different views about how the Internet and social media will work. And I suspect that X and Musk will fight this very hard, and then it becomes a standoff.
Wait, do I see this as the way I put something on Facebook and they say, oh, it doesn't pertain to our community standards or it doesn't rise to our community standards, right?
It's nonsense.
Is that what this looks like it's going to be?
Exactly. Musk has stopped them from doing this in the United States.
And now they want to
And now they're trying to do it in Europe.
Oh, my God, this is amazing.
Let's go to Chris and Beth Page for a quick one.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, guys. Two things very quickly. You brought up Doge. I'm in Nassau County in my school district. Our school supervisor makes $472,000 a year. It's publicly listed.
Wow.
$472,000. Don't you think they could find someone to do the job for about $150,000 just as effectively?
I'll bet they could.
And a free lunch.
But you were saying the market's going to bounce back. Tell me about it.
Yes. The reason I worked out on Wall Street. I always say the same thing to anyone who's afraid. This whole thing about looking at your 401ks is ridiculous right now. It's like your house. You live in your house. You know when the best time to look at your house price is when the day you go to sell it, okay?
Right.
House prices fluctuate up and down. $20,000, $30,000 every time I look at my house price. It goes up and down, okay? Same with the market. When Trump took office the first time, the Dow was at 19,000 points. 19,000. It's double that now in 8 short years, okay?
That's right.
So everyone's got to calm down.
And when the market drops, it's a great opportunity to buy. A lot of guys like you that haven't bought jump in and buy, and it brings the market right back up. So it's all baloney to say that this is any real economic harm.
Absolutely. You're
Look
so
at
right,
reality, which is the job creation, the industrial growth, the lack of illegal immigration, the cutting of government spending, the good stuff that Trump is doing, and that's what's important.
You know, it's funny. I told you the story yesterday. I try to make it fast. I knew this guy. I didn't really know him. I saw him at a restaurant bar, and he would be happy. One day he was sad. One day he was happy. And one day I got to know him a little bit. I go, what's the story? You're not in a good mood. Oh, the market's down. Every day. One day he's happy. One day he's sad. But just stop looking at it, just like he's saying.
Yep.
But anyway, Dick, it's an honor to be here.
This was fun. It was a
on
great
the
show.
With Dick Morris. And I want to say happy birthday to my mother.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.